Welcome, my name's Carolia from the Yoga Lunchbox, and today I'm interviewing Jason Te Patu, who is part of the powerlifting team over in Australia. He is also going to be facilitating a powerlifting teacher training that's starting here next April in New Zealand, and it's just been announced he's going to be teaching at Wanderlust. So welcome, Jason.
Kia ora, welcome.
Oh, so nice to have you on the show here at Yoga Lunchbox, because I know that you're living and working in Australia right now, but you're a born and bred Kiwi, right?
Oh, so proud. I'm such a proud Kiwi.
Yeah.
I think I overwhelm people with how proud I am. From here, living as a Kiwi and working here as a Kiwi, I have beautiful moko all over my body, that kind of insignia of how proud I am to be a Maori man working here. So I'm looking forward to coming home, that's for sure.
So where'd you grow up in New Zealand?
I was brought up in Whanganui now. And I had an awesome upbringing. I was whāngai by my grandparents, and they were really steeped in traditional Māori culture. So I was brought up speaking Māori first, and then I learnt English. My first English word was at school at 5.
Wow.
And so I had a really rich cultural upbringing from, 0 to 5, and then I kind of, I had the best of both worlds, the best way to describe it. And then as English took over, I spoke English during the day, and then when I got home from school at home, we spoke Māori. So I feel really blessed in that way. It was just off the back of, in my generation anyway, where it was okay to speak Māori again at school. And so I feel really privileged that I had the best of both worlds that way. Yeah.
You've spoken before about how some of the traditional Māori teachings are very similar to the traditional yoga teachings.
Yes.
Is that correct? Can you share some of those parallels with us?
Yeah, what I really love is, well, for me personally, I love the Bhagavad Gita and I love Patanjali's sutras. And in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, that non-dualist belief that we are all connected, that we are all one, and I suppose, or that that the divine is within us rather than out there somewhere, that's separate from us. I really love that aspect, and I love that how in Māori culture we are connected through our gods, tūmatawenga, papatuanuku, to all of the elements of the world, but inherently everything, like the story of Maui, for example, is perfect in that he struggled with his being a demigod, being half man, half God. And one of the biggest lessons through all of his naughtiness that he got up to and all the myths was that his God, he thought, was up there somewhere, and that he had to be, connected to that. But his godlike qualities were actually there. And so all of the answers that he was searching for were inside. And I love how yogic, one particular belief, the Bhagavad Gita, speaks about how really through sitting still, through deep self-awareness, through practice, you can find that inner God, if you will, that all the answers that really you're looking for in life are there.
Yeah.
And I really love that.
So yoga brings us home to ourselves, doesn't it?
Amen. Yes.
Now, you represented New Zealand in springboard diving, gymnastics, and aerobics, right? Which is
such a part.
So when you were representing New Zealand in aerobics, I'm guessing this might have been 90s, around the 90s, was it? Or
we'll go with that, yeah.
Maybe the late 80s?
90s, yes. 80s, 90s, late 80s, 90s.
So obviously you're the kind of person that when you do something, you do it really well. Is that...
I give it a darn good shot, let's put it that way.
Yeah. And so then that took you into a career in performing arts. And how did performing arts take you into yoga?
It's a really good question. I mean, I've kind of had this whirlwind journey throughout life, and my friend that was here, she came and visited me. I'm in Brisbane at the moment, and she said to me, And I didn't realize that this is what I was like. I was a little bit miffed, but she explained it to me, and she was like, "What are you good at now? What is it that you excel at now?" And I didn't really have an answer, but coming back to your question, I found yoga because I was doing a show 11 years ago in South Africa, and it was a dance show, and I was really exhausted because that particular show was off the back of doing 2 shows back home in New Zealand, and I didn't have enough time to rest in between each gig. And I went to the doctor one day, and I had a stye on my eye, I had cold sores around my mouth, and I couldn't hear in one ear. And, what are the signs from the universe you need to sit the hell down and rest and put your feet up? And that was what the doctor prescribed for me, but I'd only 1 week left of that gig, and then I was flying to Australia to do The Lion King. I was cast in The Lion King. So I'd packed up everything, and I was resigned to the fact, I'm moving to Australia, I'm going to be in The Lion King. And then, as the universe does, when you don't listen, it makes you listen. And it literally cut me down at the knees. I ripped my Achilles. And answer your question is, I found yoga, the asana form of it, because I was in a cast for 12 weeks, 3 months, and I couldn't move. And the only thing after the cast came off that I could do physically was to practice yoga. And I immediately fell in love with reconnecting back to my body again and really listening to my body, because clearly I hadn't been. And then, first of all, I have to admit that it was really just the physical aspect that I loved. And then all of the quietening of the mind, all of the self-awareness that obviously comes with asana, as I practice more, I fell deeply in love with. And since then, I've been practicing. That was 11 years ago. I remember going to my first yoga class, and I thought, this is so egotistical, but I'm okay to admit it. I thought, I'm flexible, I'm a dancer, I can do all of these postures. I mean, I think about that now and laugh at myself, because it's so not who I am today.
Yeah.
And I was so humbled, because I remember there was like a 70-year-old lady who was going to the class. She was right next to me, and in my ego way back then, I was huffing and puffing, trying to keep up with her. And then I just gave in. And then I was like, why am I trying to keep up with her? It's not a competition, Jace. Your whole life has been about competition. Yoga has nothing to do with that. And that really humbled me in a great way. And that's what I fell in love with,
Was that quite a switch? Because I'm guessing that if you were competing at an international level and, a variety of sports, and then performing arts at the level you were doing it is quite competitive. And now you're in yoga. So is that like a huge sea change?
I knew you were going to ask that. Can I say absolutely, straight up, absolutely. I find it such a juxtaposition to sit in now, because I'm doing a show at the moment, and I'm still immersed in yoga world. I practice 5 times a week, and I teach a bit while I'm here in Brisbane as well. And for me, it's really hard. Well, it's got easier, let's put it that way, to mix the two worlds, because here you have a world that is associated with people clapping for you. And I'm going to go as far as to say a world of ego. It can turn into that. And then a world which is about self-awareness and self-discovery, and they're so different. But I feel like I've found, and I'm still in practice around this, I feel like I've found a beautiful balance between the two. And I have great yogis in the show that I'm doing, which is, the nature of the show is that it's a beautiful story. So the universe just brought together all these beautiful people, and amongst this beautiful family I get to work with, there's some yogis, and we practice on the roof at work, for example. And we hold each other accountable when we're misbehaving, and that kind of egotistical behavior creeps in, and it's a practice, it's a practice, but I love that. I love that. I love that I have other people to do that with.
And that, I mean, you're part of the powerliving crew, and that's definitely an emphasis in the way that they teach, isn't it? Is that yoga is something that you live in everything that you do, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when did you discover powerliving? When did you become part of the crew there? How'd that happen?
I've only been there for a very short time. I kind of, as you do with your yoga journey, you go through and you practice with different teachers and you find what resonates with you. And I've gone through, since starting yoga 11 years ago, practicing, went through lots of different styles and discovered awesome teachers. And I moved out to Bondi Junction when I was living, because I'm based in Sydney, and I stumbled across the studio, and I'd been practicing at a place called Body Mind Life, which is Baron Baptiste School, where I suppose most people would say power vinyasa yoga kind of originated from, was brought into the awareness of the general populace. And I went to power living. So I've been practicing at Body Mind Life, and they said, try the studio. And I walked in, and the thing that struck me the most was the community, like the vibe. Like, I know that you've done our teacher training, so I felt love. That's the best way I can describe it. And up until then, my personal practice had been quite personal. Like, I'd go in with my cap on and go and do my practice and leave, and people would kind of do the same. It would be their own personal journey. Whereas there, it was a shared journey. And I loved that aspect. I loved how people hung out afterwards, drank tea and connected with each other. And because I'm away from home, and from my culture, I really connect with whanaungatanga, with family. And it felt like a family. And then I kept practicing at powerliving, and the studio owner said, you should do our teacher training. She didn't know about my history with having been a teacher before back home in New Zealand. And I did it, and I loved it, and I was just hooked. And what I love about the teaching is that Duncan Peake has done an amazing job of bringing the traditional teachings into the modern world. And some people have said, is it diluted because of that, to make it accessible for people? And I don't feel that at all. In fact, when I did my teacher training, I was blown away at how deep they go into philosophy, how they really emphasize the sutra, and then in equal parts emphasize Bhagavad Gita. And, they became, I've got 2 copies somewhere around here that I flick through, at least once, twice a week. And they really have resonant messages for how we can live our lives in today's world. If you practice.
If you practice, that's the thing, isn't it? So you have become a teacher of teachers now, though, with powerliving. So you are helping to teach the teachers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What's that like for you? What's it like, that experience where people come in and they're unsure and they're just learning? And how do you find it?
I love sharing. I love that I get to, through teacher training, share my personal love for powerliving yoga. Well, not just that, actually, that's quite specific, but yoga in general, and how you can, like you said earlier, how yoga is not only just on the mat, because that's what the Western world has embraced, this asana style, whereas obviously traditionally it was never about, the body was a way, and the movement in the body was a way to get to actually sitting in meditation and finding that deeper connection with yourself. So I love sharing the beautiful teachings of yoga with others, and people who struggle are my, what's the best way to describe this? I try to do my best to help them understand what I know and get clear about the messages that yoga has to offer. Because you can see when the penny drops with someone, and you've probably, because you've been on one of our retreats, seen it when people actually get past the physical element of yoga. And I'm saying, it's important, but when they realize it's something deeper, that's beautiful. I love that. I love seeing that penny drop, that aha moment where people go, oh, actually it's not just about how high I can put my leg. Because here's the deal, and I say this in my classes, just because you can put your shin up by your nose doesn't mean you're a good person.
Absolutely. All right, so if someone is thinking about doing the 200-hour teacher training of powerlifting in New Zealand starting next April, what would you be saying to them? If they're considering it, or they're a little bit on the fence, or what can they expect or take from that training?
Oh, exactly what I just said. All of the beautiful teachings. And I'm talking, well, let's start with philosophy first. So there's a huge emphasis on philosophy, because to understand really what yoga is about, you have to have a solid background and where it's come from. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the, like I said, Patanjali Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita. Those are, like, those two books are like our little mini Bibles, I suppose, that you carry throughout your whole 3 months of training. And they become your go-to. And even, I did my teacher training 2.5 years ago, and I still have them. And that's just me, but I have them and I refer to them weekly. So you have those, and so your foundations are really strong. So you know the history of yoga, all the styles of yoga, all of the 8 limbs of yoga, and you have a really good solid background there. Flip that over on the asana side, you have a really good, you walk away with a really good knowledge of how the body works. So anatomy, we're really big on anatomy, how the muscles function around the bones, how the bones stack to be in Tadasana to keep your body safe, how the muscles co-contract around the joints to keep your body safe, and what muscles work where when you're doing a posture, so that you can speak to that in your classes. And then what I know some teacher trainings don't do is they don't focus on, because it's all good to have all that information, but then how do you apply it? And are you a good teacher? Because you could be the brainiest person in the world and retain all that information about anatomy and philosophy, but you may not be able to share that well verbally with others in class. So there's a big element, and there's lots of practice of you teaching.
Right.
And we have without giving too much away, because I'd like some of it to be a surprise, we have a sequence which we teach everyone, and we go through that sequence. So out of it, at the end of it, you get a solid vinyasa practice that you can go and teach safely. That's really important. Once you've finished from a 90-minute practice from go to woe. So you kind of have a base to start with, and you can start branching up from there.
Awesome.
Plus you have a jolly good time along the way.
Yeah. So you must be looking forward to coming and spending some time in New Zealand as one of the facilitators on that training.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
I love home. What I'm really clear about, before I came to Brisbane 3 months ago for the show that I'm doing, I came home for a holiday, and my partner and I drove around the South Island, and my partner's never seen New Zealand, and I got to see it freshly through his eyes, and I fell in love again with my country. Because I've been away now for 9 years, I was very clear that I want to come home, and I want to come home and share all of the beautiful things that I've learnt on my travels. So I'm looking forward to coming home. Yeah. I really am.
So before we wrap up, let's talk about Wanderlust, because it's just been announced that you will be teaching at Wanderlust New Zealand. Are you also teaching at the Wanderlust Australia?
I'm not, because I'm actually doing another project for powerlifting. It's interesting because they said to me, well, when do you finish the show that you're doing? I said, I'm finished middle of January. So I have 1 week off, and then I basically hit the ground running with them. at Wanderlust in New Zealand. I fly back, and then I'm doing what we call the Modern Yogi Project, which is kind of like a 42-day yoga. Not, I don't want to say challenge, but
Like a sadness.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing that, and then so I can't do Wanderlust here, but I'll definitely be there on a couple of days. Are you coming over?
No, I just beat the New Zealand one. So
All right.
for the New Zealand one, tell us about your classes. What are you going to be teaching? What can people expect?
Sure. I'm really excited. Like, my whole thing about this is, like I said earlier, I really want to come home. It's like a homecoming for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I want to share things personally that I've discovered throughout my yoga journey. And so I've developed 3 classes. One of them, and that's probably going to be the mainstay, is to discover the peaceful warrior within. And my powerlifting, bless them, colleagues have kind of dubbed me the Kiwi warrior, the modern day warrior, which I suppose, if I wear that humbly. I wear that mantle humbly. And so I'm interested in the idea of how the legs work, and how with amazing foundations in everything, really, not just in our yoga practice, we can, and in my class, and will go everywhere and explore from strong foundations up and out. Through breath, through bandha, we'll discover our body. And just listening and seeing how, when we're challenged, when the legs are shaking, where do we go?
Yeah.
Do we go off into mind space, or can we find that peaceful warrior within, that self-awareness through breath and through bandha? And that deep connection to Papatūānuku, that deep connection to Mother Earth, our foundation. So that'll be my first class. Second class is freedom to flow, I've called it, in that what gets in the way of you really flowing on your mat. And that'll be a vinyasa practice, and exploring the idea of, the chitta vritti, the fluctuations of the mind that stop us, that get in the way of us fully exploring, a physical practice without story, without drama. So it'll be powerful. And in that aspect, it will, alignment-wise, be focusing on the heart. And that when we get rid of those blockages, when we get rid of the chitta vritti, when the mind is clear, and when we're fully in flow, it feels like the heart bursts open. So it's a heart opener, backbender class, where with love everything can and will flow. And then my third one is just a feel-good class where I've got a homegrown Kiwi mix. We're going to do a bit of traditional chanting, and I've been known to sing in Shavasana, and I've got a couple of my Kiwi mates helping me out. And so we're just going to flow into a funky, groovy, feel-good weekend to finish off the Wanderlust Festival flow.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic, Jace. Hopefully I can make it to one of your classes.
Thank you, and me, you too.
Yeah. Now, one final question to wrap up. If you were going to say something to men out there who have not yet tried yoga, either because they think it's too wussy, or because secretly they're afraid that, they'll not look so great because they're maybe not that bendy, etc., what would you say to those men?
I would say, can I say what I really want to say?
Absolutely, this is the whole point, right? What would you really say?
Be brave, be courageous.
Yeah.
Because you might just be surprised at what you discover about your body, and more importantly, about yourself, and not just your who you think you are self, but about really who you are. And I love what one of my teachers said, is that yoga really allows you to discover who you truly are rather than who you think you should be. And that would be a piece of sage advice, passing it on from one person to another, to the males out there. And I hope to see a lot of them at Wanderlust when I come home, and in our teacher training back home in Aotearoa.
Awesome. Well, Jay, thank you so much for speaking to the Yoga Lunchbox.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for having me. Look forward to seeing you at Wanderlust.